Iowa gets beat up again, this time at Illinois. The Hawkeyes fall by 20 as we count down to the end of an era and a different era. The women's basketball team, they continue tonight. We break it all down today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Just takes a minute and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Simple as that with FanDuel. Let's get into it. A rapid reaction after Iowa falls to Illinois. Ugly game at times where Iowa, outside of a stretch there, towards the end of the first half, middle of the first half into about the 6-minute mark, got back into the game. Looked like maybe this was going to be competitive for a little bit. Brock Harding was a big part of that, knocking down some shots, getting to the rim, playing in a place where he's had a lot of history. And not just history of what he did at the state basketball tournament and winning a state championship as a senior, but also his family connections to the University of Illinois. He played well. Kind of stopped there. Brock Harding is the guy that playing at the highest level. I think we know you're in for probably a rough night against Illinois. Now, this Illinois team has been as inconsistent as maybe anybody in college basketball. And on the heels of 3 consecutive losses, including blowout losses to Wisconsin and then against Duke at Madison Square Garden over the weekend, you wondered where they were going to be. As we mentioned in the preview for the game yesterday, there was talk that there was some illness, and they appeared to be right. Legs definitely appeared to be there as they knocked down 9 3-pointers, 9 of 29 from behind the arc. But, Iowa, it's what they are. This is a depleted team. And with Owen Freeman out for the season when he made the decision to shut it down, when you see just a group of guys that it hasn't clicked. We went out to the trip, and I think really where the tide completely turned is what we saw out in Los Angeles. When Iowa went out there for that doubleheader of games against USC and UCLA, got blitzed by USC, tried to come back, as we've seen so many times. And I think it was after the Washington game, I think in the game notes they had it, that Iowa this year, in their 16 wins, 6 of them, they've come back trailing in the second half to win a game. When the talent gap that Iowa faces many times is there, you can't afford that you're just going to be able to rely, to be a good team, to be an above average team. And this is right now a below average team, certainly for Big Ten standards. It's going to be incredibly difficult still for them to punch their ticket into the Big Ten tournament. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. Also going to talk about the women's basketball team, and we'll break down their matchup tonight against Michigan, an opponent that this is a winnable road game. After the back-to-back losses, though, after that big winning streak from the women, how they're going to bounce back. We're going to get into that also. Back to what we saw against Illinois. Mentioned Brock Harding, and he was the bright spot in the game. He finishes in double figures, knocks down a couple of 3-pointers. Good to see. That shot continues to develop. 16 points in the game, 4 assists. But maybe one of the most baffling aspects of this game was Iowa's inability to hold on to the ball. That's not Fran McCaffrey basketball. And when you're turning it over at this rate, that's just not anything that we're used to with the Fran McCaffrey coach team. And it hasn't been an issue throughout the course of this year. It was against Illinois. You have 14 assists, pretty good, on 24 made field goals. That's solid. But the 16 turnovers, just can't afford it. And it was a little bit of everybody. Harding had the 5 turnovers, but 3 from Traore. Dembali had a couple of turnovers. Sanford had a couple of turnovers. That's Peyton that had a couple in the game. 2 apiece from Dix and from Bronze. It's not Iowa hoops. They're depleted. They're trying a bunch of different things. It's not working. And that's where we are. This is a lost season. And a lost season that very well could be the end of the Fran McCaffrey era. And as we talked about yesterday with Chad Leistokow, and we've talked to a number of different people about this, what I continue to hear is that we are trending that direction, that this is going to be it. Other people, including Chad, think that that's not the case. So we'll see. I mean, nobody, if anybody had the story, they'd come out and say it. Everybody thinks they have sources. Everybody has connections. People hear things. You hear rumblings. Maybe you read it online. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's the guy at the corner bar. Whatever it is, you hear things. I hear things, but it's nothing definitive. This is not breaking news. This is not that I'm reporting anything. There's no reporting here. Just from what I've heard and the people that I talk to, and I believe that I think this is going to be the end. But again, it's just a thought. There's nothing definitive because if it was, I'd have the breaking news. I don't have that. And that's not where we're going to go. We're not going to be saying things that we don't know are 100% accurate. We're going to speculate. That's what we do. And that's what we have the ability to do here on the podcast. And when there's rumblings and rumors out there, I always pass them along to you with the caveat this is not reporting. This is not coming out with news stories, just what we hear. Regardless, there's still 3 games left of the regular season. We'll see if there's a Big Ten tournament behind it. We'll see if there's postseason for this Iowa men's team on top of it. When you look at what they did defensively at times, there were some good moments overall, but again, it's just more of the same. Slow rotations, slow getting out. There's times where you try to play zone, you got 2 guys in the same spot. It's the same things that have plagued this team throughout the course of the season, and really this program on the defensive end of the floor. They're just not good enough there. One thing I was happy to see last night, even in a losing effort, is that Seydou Traore got some minutes. And when he made mistakes, he wasn't yanked quickly. Now, who knows what his future holds at the University of Iowa, but this is just in general. There are certain players that, under Fran McCaffrey, when they've made a mistake, just doesn't feel like they have the same kind of leash as some other guys. Like Peyton Sandford was terrible last night. 2 of 10 from the floor. He still plays 34 minutes. Now, he's also a senior. I get that. He's gone through the battles, and he's come up big many times for Iowa in the past. Traore, though, was able to play through it a little bit. And when there was rough stretches, it wasn't bam, automatic. Here's a horn. You're out of the game. Carter Kingsbury, another 18 minutes out of him. Man, that kid's a fighter. And, for us that remember his dad, Chris, at the University of Iowa and kind of what could have been for him, decided to leave after his junior campaign and had a good opportunity to make an NBA team, and I believe missed a flight if memory serves. But that aside, now Chris Kingsbury was a McDonald's All-American. Chris Kingsbury was a stud coming out of Ohio. And when Dr. Tom nabbed him, I remember watching him for the first time. I was at Iowa basketball camp as a youngster and watching him just hoist up those deep threes, which at the time, it's kind of unheard of at the collegiate level. Guys taking 25, 27, 30-footers in a game. You didn't see that very often. He was incredible. And to see Carter have these moments, and we talked about this with Evan Bronze, who continues to go out there at that monster dunk. That was great to see. These guys that are not going to be program changers, but they're guys that care about the program. From Carter deciding to walk on, his dad a star here. Evan, a kid that grew up in Iowa City, went the mid-major route, played at Belmont, decided to come home, didn't play a ton. In fact, played a little bit more early last year when he first came in. Saw those minutes dissipate. Didn't pout, didn't whine. And when the opportunity came, he was ready. And we know Evan Bronze is a great athlete. I mean, the dude's leaping ability is in the upper crust, right? Certainly for a guy that's 6'9". He is up there, and he gets up there with those dunks. But to go out there, to play hard, those are some of the good stories in a disappointing year for Iowa basketball. We continue here on Locked On Hawkeyes. So the question remains, what is it going to take for this team to make, no, not the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten tournament? Yeah, that's where our conversation is. We're going to talk about that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. That's right. Live same-game parlays. I love using FanDuel. Live betting feature gets every moment more and then making the game even more exciting. could be back in the Hawkeyes for a late game rally, or just picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I miss my opportunity. Plus, the app, it's easy to use. And when you win, love this, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Trent Condon back with you once again. Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, so we got to go to the website. You hear me mention it from time to time. It is bball.notnothing.net. This has been a long-time tool for tools like myself that love the NCAA tournament, love conference tournament time, love brackets in general. It's very simply a website that was built from an Iowa State fan, but it was built in order for you to project what happens at the end of the regular season and what that means as it pertains for the conference tournament, what the conference tournament will look like, what the seeding will look like, what the bracket will look like overall. If there are tiebreakers involved, it also breaks that down for you. A lot of great work that was done on this website, even from an Iowa State fan, and we will utilize it. So as we project as of right now, going into the games here on Wednesday evening, this is the way that it looks. If everything goes according to plan, we know that it won't. This is what would happen. Iowa would finish the year with 3 consecutive losses. They would be tied with Minnesota in the number 15 spot, the last spot to get into the Big Ten tournament. Bottom 3 teams do not get in. Teams 16, 17, and 18, they're out. Not going to Indianapolis. Their season comes to a close unless they get a postseason invite. That aside, in that scenario, Iowa would be on the outside looking in. Why? Because they lost at home to this godforsaken Minnesota team. That leaves Iowa on the outside looking in. So that very simply shows us we got to find a win. And when you look at the remaining schedule, what's the most realistic spot you're going to find a victory? Coming up this weekend, they go to Northwestern. Now, this Northwestern team is really banged up. Now, they've had their set of issues this season. They have really struggled at times. But they've also shown an ability to beat some good teams. They've won a couple in a row, beat Minnesota on the road, beat Ohio State on the road. Not only beat the Buckeyes in Columbus, but they did it by 21. They beat Minnesota at the barn by 12. Oh, great. So that's what you have coming up this weekend on Friday night. That'll be an 8 o'clock tip-off. That seems likely, at least the most likely of the remaining 3, to me. At least it did until what we see the last week from the Wildcats. All right, let's say that's an L. Up next is the home finale. It will be senior night for Peyton Sanford, Evan Bronze, and the other seniors, as here comes the number 8 team in the country, Michigan State, to town. Michigan State in the past has been a thorn in the side of Iowa, though recently they have played a whole lot better against the Buckeyes. Now, Tom Izzo's not going to let them forget about that, though. It's not going to be one that falls to the side. So let's say that's a loss. And then it comes down to the game against Nebraska on the road. What I'm getting to is all 3 of these games are going to be tough. You know, there's not an easy one there. There's not one that you say, yeah, that's going to be automatic the way that it's going to happen for Iowa. So I want to look at it this way and taking a look at the numbers as I scroll through and find where Iowa is. There we are. Is that for this season? No, I believe that was. There we go. Iowa, 77th in the country at Bart Torvik. So in terms of odds, it actually has Michigan State being the most likely. A 30% chance of winning the game against Michigan State, 27% chance in each of the road tilts at Northwestern and at Nebraska. About a 6.5 point underdog in both the road games and a 6-point dog at home against Michigan State. Let's just take the math for what it's worth here. Let's go that direction and let's give them that win at home against Michigan State. I know it feels crazy. Just bear with me. We're trying to get Iowa in the Big Ten tournament. All right, it does. Iowa is in. Iowa's, in fact, tied for 13th place in this scenario with Northwestern, USC, and there's Iowa. Because of tiebreakers, though, Iowa is the number 15 seed. Here's the path for the Hawkeyes. Well, they get a rematch against Nebraska. Let's say. Then they get Oregon. Almost got them. Well, if we're living crazy here, we are. We're talking about getting a win where you have a 70% chance of losing, then winning a game in the Big Ten tournament, then winning another game. Who awaits in the quarterfinals? Again, still 3 more victories to win a Big Ten championship. You got to win 5 in a row to win it all when you're coming out of the opening day on Wednesday. There sits the Wisconsin Badgers. Yeah, we know how that has gone for Iowa. This is where we are. And when you look at the program big picture, when you take a step back and look at where Iowa basketball is and where it is as it pertains to the fans, the fan base, people are over it. And the scary part is I talk about back in the day probably too much. It's very formative for everybody being a youngster, but for me as a sports fan, Iowa basketball is really what built me into being a sports fan and doing what I do for a living. And all the things revolve around Iowa men's basketball. That's a number one. And because of that, I guess I probably have a closer connection to the program and wanting more from the program and just hoping. But I find it incredibly sad when I talk to people that I know are Hawkeye fans, that I know used to love. I haven't watched in weeks. I don't know when the games are on. It's not on locally. People that loved Iowa basketball and just how completely detached they are from the program and what's happening. Oh, they played last night? What happened? Those kind of conversations are scary. And regardless if it's Fran McCaffrey or a new coach next year, what can be done to repair this fan base? Because a new hire alone is not going to be good enough. A new hire, you get that initial bump, but after that, there's work that needs to be done. And it's getting back into the communities and getting back and showing Iowa basketball is entertaining. It can be fun, that it's going to be different, that there's a possibility of some March success. All the things that haven't happened for a long, long time. There's been almost 100 programs that have made a Sweet 16 since the last time Iowa did in the 98-99 season. And think of that. Almost 100 programs have gone to the Sweet 16, winning 2 games in the Big Dance. Iowa hasn't had things open up for them. Iowa's had bad luck, bad draws, all the different things and all the excuses that you can point to, but that's the reality. You and I and St. Peter's and VCU and on and on and on. And we can play this game. We can go through the list and it's terrible. But work needs to be done because this is a fan base. It's not that they're mad. It's that they're checked out. How do you get those people back? How do you reinvigorate it? And with people using their disposable income on now women's basketball, on the wrestling program as they have for a very long time. And there's other things to do. People's lives get busy. And when you don't give them that reason, or you let them off the hook in a way, you're where we are right now. Speaking of that women's team, they got a big one. Plus, we're going to let you know, you want to see Caitlin Clark back at Carver Hawkeye Arena, how you can get tickets. We'll talk about that as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Back with you one final time, Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So it's Iowa, Michigan tonight in women's basketball. Really important game for Iowa as it pertains to Big Ten seeding and a potential path for them making a run. The 3-time defending champion in the Big Ten tournament. Well, the path is going to be much more arduous this season. We'll talk about that momentarily in the matchup against the Wolverines. But I mentioned Caitlin is coming home back to Carver Hawkeye Arena coming up on Sunday, May 4th for an exhibition game with the Indiana Fever. We are 67 days away. In fact, yes, on the Iowa website right now where you can find out about it. They have a countdown clock for Caitlin Clark returning to Carver Hawkeye Arena as they'll face off against the Brazilian national team in a preseason game that'll be Sunday, May 4th. Tickets are limited to 4 per customer, and you can purchase them online. It will begin tomorrow, Thursday, February 27th, 9 o'clock Central Time, you can be logged in. This is where the pre-sale for people that have women's season basketball tickets, also Kinnick Society Gold and Kinnick Society iClub level donors will be available at 9 o'clock. Then after that, it will be Indiana Fever season ticket holders. I'm sure there's a few of you out there, but not many of us Iowans that are a part of it. But for you crossover fans, thank you and hello. And finally, it will get to then Friday the 28th at 9 o'clock. You will be able to access tickets at that time if there are any available. Do I believe there are going to be any available? I don't think we're going to get there. We will see. With the limited, though, just 4 per person that is at that top level, possibly they'll go to that one. Here's the other part, though. We have some big tickets. In fact, on the upper ends, how about $70 a pop? And the high-end tickets, $250 a pop. Then the secondary market. And you just wait. This thing is going to be an absolute behemoth. I mean, there are going to be some big ones that are going to be set for that one in terms of ticket prices that you're going to have when Caitlin Clark comes back. All right, tonight, the Iowa women taking on Michigan. Back-to-back losses, missed opportunities. We talked about it against Ohio State, that great comeback in the final minute and a half of regulation to force overtime, took the early lead, and then just ran out of gas. And then what happened against UCLA, a lot of what-ifs, a disappointing whistle, all the different things, but didn't get it done. So here they are, 2 consecutive losses after that 6-game winning streak. Michigan is a team that is playing much better here as of late. I really thought coming down the stretch, and we talked about this this was maybe one of the more winnable games outside of the gimmies against Rutgers and Wisconsin to wrap things up. But after a little bit of a lull, where we saw the Wolverines lose to Ohio State, took losses by 30 to Michigan State. That was at home. They lost to a bad Wisconsin team. Thought, oh boy, they're maybe going to even struggle to make the NCAA tournament, even with the great start that they had to the season. Instead, they ripped off 5 out of 6. In there, they beat Oregon. They beat Nebraska. They beat Michigan State, beat Indiana, and then Penn State the last time out. But not just beat these teams. For the most part, they're crushing them. Yeah, they're winning big in these games. Olivia Olson, really fun player to watch, is a team that's really efficient offensively. They will not going to play at the quickest pace, but overall, really good shooting team. They are 30th in the country in three-point shooting at nearly 36%. For Iowa, what I enjoy is, boy, this team, they guard you. This is not your prototypical Iowa women's basketball team that we've grown accustomed to recently under Lisa Bluter, but even before that, and Caitlin Clark, before the Caitlin Clark era, there's a team that just tried to outscore you. They can get some stops on you now. And I think that's going to have to be the case tonight. They're going to have to win it on the defensive end of the floor if they're going to pull off the upset. Slight underdog. I've not seen the lines yet from FanDuel. Again, the projections have that about a 3.5-point underdog tonight against Michigan, and they'll wrap things up against Wisconsin over the weekend. That will be senior day, and we will say goodbye to the great group of seniors that have been a big part of this women's basketball program, and that'll be coming up over the weekend. We'll be back with you with another Rapid Reaction podcast. Here, it was with the men's side of things in the matchup against Illinois. Then for tomorrow, we'll have you covered with the Iowa women against Michigan. Big upset could go a long way as that pertains to Iowa moving up. And as we look through the projections also, we did it for the men's side. Let's do it for the women. If everything plays out according to plan, Iowa will be the number 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament. That's right. Opening up again, back-to-back games then against Wisconsin in this scenario. Iowa then would move on as the 11th seed to face 6-seeded Illinois. I think they'd like a rematch against the Illini after letting that one slip away. And then after that, another victory in the quarterfinals. They would get Ohio State. Ooh, yeah. Would definitely sign up for that one. But we're still talking about a team that would have to win 5 games in 5 days. Let's just flip one thing, though. If Iowa wins tonight against Michigan, what that would do. Again, all the other favorites would go. Iowa would bump up to the number 10 seed. They'd get Penn State in the opening round, Illinois again in the second round, who would then be the 7th seed in this scenario, though the quarterfinals would be against USC. Just a little bit more difficult than Ohio State, and the rematch for USC, I think the Trojans would be ready. Well, we do know this is going to be an NCAA tournament team unless the wheels completely fall off. Lose to Michigan, lose to Wisconsin, lose an opening round game, and I think even then they're safely in the tournament. And that is a good thing. Continue the momentum of this program and having Jan Jetson her opportunity to build this thing up, maybe build it into a behemoth. That'll do it for today. Thanks for being with us. And making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. I got you covered on the Hawkeye side. Your favorite baseball team with spring training going, we got you covered there. It could be your favorite baseball team, NBA, NHL, NFL, all covered here. Plus, Craig Sheeman doing great work. Locked On Big Ten. You love Big Ten talk. Craig's got you covered. Check it out on Locked On Big Ten. We're Locked On Hawkeyes. I'm Trent Condon. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Hit us up again. 5-star review if you're listening on the audio side, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Let's get it done tonight. Go Hawks.